Let's go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen. This is a report out of Pennsylvania, which it really is kind of the ballgame. Pennsylvania really is kind of the ballgame. Whichever two of these two candidates wins Pennsylvania is very likely to be the next president of the United States, and they are going all in. The beginning paragraph here in this article says when Vice President Kamala Harris rolled out her economic agenda, she went to Pittsburgh. When she unveiled her running mate, she went to Philly. When she had to pick a place for Obama's first fall rally, it was back to Pittsburgh. Trump has earmarked the greatest share of his advertising budget for Pennsylvania, has held more rallies in the state than in any other battleground since Ms. Harris joined the race, including 2 on Wednesday, 3 in the last week. And they talk about why Pennsylvania is so compelling. It's sort of like a microcosm of all of America. They write it's home to urban centers like Philly, of course, large population of black voters who Dems need to mobilize, has fast-growing, highly educated, mostly white suburbs outside of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, where Republicans have been bleeding support in the Trump years. There are struggling industrial towns where Trump needs to maximize his vote, smaller cities that are actually booming with Latino immigrants where Harris wants to make gains, and there's a significant, although shrinking, rural population. White voters without college degrees who make up Mr. Trump's base still account for roughly half the vote. And if you look at Pennsylvania politically, Democrats did very well there in 2022, in part because Republicans had sort of like uniquely poor candidates in Dr. Oz and what's the other dude's name who ran for governor?
Mastriano.
Mastriano, he was really, really out there. And so Democrats did well at the Senate and the gubernatorial level. But if you look at the legislature, it's the only state in the country where Democrats have one chamber and Republicans have the other. And the margin in the state's lower chamber is a single seat. That tells you just how closely Pennsylvania is divided and why this is such a dogfight between them.
And the dollars show, the dollars are the only place where there is not as much of a disparity between the Democrats and the Republicans. You have 180 million being spent so far by the Democrats, 170 million by the Republicans. In fact, they look at Pennsylvania. I think part of the reason, too, is not only is that Pennsylvania is the tipping point state, but the general theory that both of the campaigns seem to have is that a polling error is going to miss in either way. And so the theory behind that means that it would be very unlikely to, let's say, win Pennsylvania and not also win Wisconsin and or Michigan, right? Although, I guess to be fair, in 2016, Trump only won Michigan by like 10,000 votes. I did look at his victory margin or loss margin in 2020. It's 80,555 votes in the state of Pennsylvania. That's incredibly close after almost 6 million, or more than 6 million votes that were cast in the election. So what that means for, for this is that it really is just get down to turnout in the constituencies that you can, and then just kind of hope and pray for those swing voters to come out. The point about Pennsylvania being America is very important. They have those industrial steel towns. They have a long legacy of, half of the state. It's gigantic. Has more in common with the industrial Midwest than it does with the East Coast. The East Coast side has a lot of more economic dynamism. You've got the Pennsylvania mainline suburbs. There's quite a bit of wealth that is there. Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia itself, has got its own constituencies. You've got black population, Hispanic population as well. We saw previously that we played here on the show about how the poor areas of Philadelphia are actually swinging to Trump. The biggest, we don't know if that's an urban-only phenomenon, if it also translates to poorer, more rural areas in the state. So the point is that it's changing a lot, and obviously it's very up for grabs. But Dr. Oz lost the state by almost 6 points back in 2022. So that could be an indicator, also a main indicator to me about the strength of abortion. John Fetterman, if you remember that time, could barely even put a coherent sentence together.
Just had that stroke.
He was basically
remember the debate performance.
It was crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's only recently that he's regained his power of speech. But my point is that Fetterman, I thought he was going to lose. To this day, I still don't really get it, how anybody voted for him back in 2022. But he won not just by a little, he won by a lot, like 6 points in a major swing state. So that was the power of abortion at that time. Shapiro beat Mastriano by 13 points. So the question about the whole polling thing and the tightness is if 2020 is the benchmark for what they're polling against, I don't know. To me, the state seems to have shifted quite a bit in that time. At the same time, Trump is such a unique figure that he's so much better and more appealing to Republican voters or even swing voters than an Oz or a Mastriano or even a Dave McCormick, if you look at how much more he's running ahead of him, that maybe he's the only guy left in America who could still win of the state of Pennsylvania as a Republican. So it's complicated, you know, in terms of how we look at it, but the inside battle for it and the likelihood of it being the tipping point state is so high. I was just looking again, it's almost like 30 or 40% or whatever for the Nate Silver forecast of whoever wins it. And just in general, if we think about it, like that will be the main one to watch on election night. We're lucky we're on East Coast time, so is Pennsylvania. We can see it was called at roughly 2 a.m. On 2016 election night. If it is as close as again as it was in 2020, it could take a while, especially with mail-in ballots. Although I do believe the mail-in balloting, you know, things have changed in the last couple of years for processing. It's no longer COVID and all of that. But,
yeah,
you
but
know,
they
you could brace for a long election.
They still, I believe, have law on the books that says you can't even begin processing those mail-in ballots until election day. That means even just like smoothing out the envelopes and preparing them to be fed into the machine, which means that it's going to take longer. And it also means that just like last time around, remember we talked about that quote unquote red mirage because a lot of the Republican in-person votes on that day and in smaller counties where they're able to count things more quickly, those came in first. And that's what helped Trump to spin his tales about how the election was stolen in, you know, Philadelphia,
Stop
blah,
the
blah,
count.
blah.
Yeah,
stop the count. We are likely to see, it may not be as dramatic an effect as last time. In fact, I don't think it will be as dramatic an effect as last time, but it will still be something to watch for on election day. That is likely those Republican in-person small county votes are likely to come in more quickly than, you know, the big urban areas or even the big suburban areas where Democrats are stronger. The other thing to point out about Pennsylvania is, you know, Trump just had his giant rally in Butler, Pennsylvania with Elon Musk returning to the site of that assassination attempt on his life. And that's another like X factor in all of this, whether that helps to drive local enthusiasm for Trump. The rally with Elon, I don't know what the final numbers were,
it was
but
like
I mean, it was huge. There were a lot of people there, obviously a lot of energy around that. New York Times interviewed some local supporters who were really energized, inspired by, you know, his reaction in that moment and decided, you know, not only am I going to vote for him, I'm going to volunteer, I'm going to be a like precinct captain or whatever. So that is possible to see that impact as well. But just to give you a sense of just how close these are, the state is in terms of the polls. We can put up the latest RCP average. Now, RCP, it's not a model. It just literally takes in every poll, whether it's a good pollster or a bad pollster or an in-between pollster, whatever their record is, they just feed them in to the average. But based on their average of every single poll that's out there, the partisan ones and the nonpartisan ones, they've got Trump at 0.2 of a lead over Kamala Harris. In other words, it could not possibly be closer. And Saagar, I know you spent some time in the state.
Well, just for a weekend.
Yeah, but were you are you still like detoxing from all the political ads that were shoved in your face?
I'm not lying. Like my in-laws, they like to watch actual cable television, and like sitting there being bombarded with those ads is maddening. Especially, I think we were watching the Phillies game. Every single commercial break is just, it's literally Trump ad, Kamala ad, Dave McCormick ad, Bob Casey ad, then whoever the congressional candidate is. I'm like, I'm going to lose my goddamn mind.
Wow.
It was the first time I'm like, I'm happy I don't live in a swing state because I don't think I could handle this. Because even if you don't want to engage with it and you don't watch terrestrial TV, it's on the radio. The yard signs are everywhere. I will say they just are very civically engaged people. I'll give them that. Like when you ride along the highway or anywhere, here in Virginia, I wouldn't say it's as common, but there, I mean, every house, if whoever they're supporting, they're there. There does seem to be a lot of neighborliness, so that's good. You know, people respect each other, but it was fascinating for me to see it like in action of what it really looks like in the hardcore swing state for, you know, right before an election. The ads are just everywhere. And also, like I said, the choice of those ads for Trump, every ad, immigration, migrant immigration. And then there were some Dave McCormick ads which tried to do that thing where he's like, Bob Casey's the real radical on abortion. But from Bob Casey and from Kamala, it was abortion all day long. It was all Roe versus Wade for their paid advertising. I mean, possibly because I was literally in the suburbs, so maybe that's why the targeting was there. But it seemed to me like that. I took note of the fact that It was so strong, so unified in that message from both of those candidates, from the Senate candidates as well as the presidential candidates, that clearly they've got a lot of internals. This is the main thing to go all in on.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.